You come to a speedcubing competition, you sit down to do your first solve, and suddenly your hands start shaking, your heart rate is up and you can feel it, and you do your solve and it's worse than your average solve at home. And the most frustrating part is that you've been practicing so much, and you ask yourself, why can't I just show my average results at the competition? The short answer is, if you did 100 solves a day before and you call that your average, then you arrive at the competition and the 5 solves that you do there are not your average situation. They are different in so many ways. I mean, the people are walking around making noises, the physical environment is different, maybe the furniture is different, your cube appears to be different because of the lighting conditions, and your brain switches to a completely different mode, a panic mode. So the goal of this video is simple: to teach you how to make your home solves psychologically and environmentally identical to the competition solves. Just for the context, when I was approaching the world record threshold on the 5x5 blindfolded, I've had this problem so badly that I designed an entire framework around it. And today I'm going to share it with you. And it roughly can be split into 2 categories, like the 2 buckets. The first one is objective, like what objectively changes when you go to a competition in terms of environment and what you see and what you hear and what you feel. And subjective is that, psychological aspect of it, the perceived novelty or the perceived uniqueness of the solve that you do on a competition. If somehow you manage to fix both, then your hands stop shaking when you are at the competition, or at least you just get used to it and it becomes your norm. So here's the core idea. You do your solves at home, a lot of them, and they kind of blur together. So your brain treats them as the background. And then you come to a competition and suddenly you feel spotlight, scarcity, and your brain treats them completely differently. And the idea is to absolutely remove the novelty, not by changing the competition environment, because let's be honest, you can't really do that, but by changing the home environment in such a way that it resembles competition environment as much as possible in as many aspects as possible. If you start the decomposition process and build an entire mind map just like I did, and by the way, you can download this one in the description, I made a PDF for you, you quickly find out that there are so many things that are different in the comp, and it's so fun to think about how you can tweak each and every one of them at home to maybe make them look like a competition more. Now, instead of going through the mind map in any particular order, let me just follow the Pareto principle and just give you one thing that had the highest impact. From my personal experience, especially when I was approaching the world record level, the biggest discomfort was caused by feeling the pressure of people watching me. And especially when they know that my times are good, they have kind of expectations. And this builds so much pressure that it causes me to feel discomfort, feel the stress, feel the pressure, all eyes on me. Of course, you can't just isolate your solving station and tell people not to look. You need to resemble the feeling of being watched at home. And you probably already guessed the answer is just start streaming your solves. This is really, really simple. Just before any practicing session, you turn on your camera, you start the live stream, you share a public link somewhere, or just share it once so that you know that any person at any given time can join the link. And even if nobody's watching at the moment, there's always a chance that someone can join the stream mid-solve. So you know that by default, when you are doing solves, you are being watched, or at least you have a potential of, being watched. So when you go to a competition, that feeling that you have some eyes on you, it's not novelty anymore. It's your norm. The goal is not to induce stress artificially by streaming your solves, although the first few days when you incorporate this routine into your practicing sessions, you will probably feel pretty stressed and unusual. The goal is to make your brain comfortable with the idea that any solve that you do at any given time, people are watching you. And this will absolutely delete the novelty of that feeling at the competition. Speaking of deleting novelty, one fun exercise for you guys is to start exploring this mind map and find these little details, little aspects that were novel at your last competition that differ the most from your home environments. For example, the height of the table. So probably the way you practice at home is when you are doing solves, every time you do them at the same height of the table. So one variable that you can change is if you are lucky to have this adjustable table height, like I do right now, you can experiment with every session starting with a different table height. Another aspect that was super annoying to me when I was going to my first competitions was the lighting. When I was inspecting the cube, I noticed that the stickers, for some reason, have different colors, and it feels like a different cube, not the one that I was practicing with at home. And the reason is every solving station at the competition have different light sources located in different parts of the ceiling, because between the rounds or even within one round, you are solving at different solve stations. So the way to mitigate this and to make your brain comfortable with the feeling that every time you do a solve, your cube feels different and looks different is by introducing another light source above your solving station at home and just simply change its position every time you do a solve, or at least every time you sit at the table. Another thing that you can play around is furniture adjustments, but this time the chair. So of course, every time you go to a comp, your chair that you sit on will be different, and especially will be different from the one that you get used to at home. So if your chair has any kind of adjustments at home, then you might want to play with it every time you approach your practicing session. I'm talking about the distance between the floor and the chair, and the elbow adjustments with elbow support, without elbow support, deeply in the table or outside of the table, without table at all. So you get used to the feeling that every time you do a solve, it might feel different. Another thing to play around is the routine itself that they follow at the competition. So on the WCA comp, they have scorecards that you have to sign after every solve, which you are probably not doing at home. And I'm not saying that you should do it after every solve you do, but at least you can introduce these special solving / practicing sessions, which resembles the competition routine the most. So during your day, you have 5 solves that resemble the competition environment. And during these 5 solves, every day, you can tweak randomly any aspect that you can find in the mind map, like the temperature, to introduce some novelty every single day during these 5 solves. For example, at the competition, the time between you go to your waiting area and sit down and practice and the time when you are called up for your next solve is pretty much random, right? So you can easily simulate this randomness. There are a bunch of apps where you can press a button and then the alarm will go on after a random interval from 30 to 60 seconds, let's say. The aspect of I can't control everything at the competition becomes familiar because you can't control everything at home now either. Now, let me also teach you one very, very impactful tactic. So at comp, you have a lot of people walking around and a lot of people making noises, and you want to recreate this visual peripheral movement and the background noise like you are at comp actually. And the easiest way to do this is to actually turn on a recorded live stream from any big competition when you're doing solve. So if you have a big monitor or even a projector, that will be ideal. Or, any device, you can arrange, the monitors if you have multiple, or your tablet or your phone with a video from the speedcubing competition where people are walking around and you just loop this video. This is something I actually have been doing a lot during practicing 5 blinds when I have my main monitor playing this video of the WCA World Championship from some year. And I get used to, when I'm looking at the cube and memorizing the cube, I see people walking around with my peripherals. And it so closely resembles what you see in the competition because this is literally a stream from a competition. I hope that this shows that when you really decompose the problem, you can go really creative about tweaking every aspect of it. But there's just one other part that I was talking about in the beginning of the video that cannot be tweaked as easily, and this is psychological, like a mental attitude, and it will sound really counterintuitive. And I was fighting with this thought because how hard it is to believe that your solves are better, or at least they are closer to your average, when you don't care about them. Now, this is really hard to accept, but most of the speedcubers, high achieving speedcubers, agree with me that when you overthink your solve, you start treating it differently. But the trick is to kind of trick your brain into believing that the solves that you are doing now at comp is no different from hundreds or even thousands of other solves. This is just random solves that you shouldn't care about. So one trick that helped me when I'm doing a 5 blind solves at comp, or to be honest, when I was doing this 10 years ago, is to focus on the after party. So after a competition, usually we gathered with a bunch of guys to go to a bar or to go to someone's apartment to play some board games and have some fun. And this is what I was forcing myself to think about before every solve. This is all about eliminating the thoughts that are potentially stress-inducing and will affect badly at your solving time. This is very easy in principle and really, really hard in practice. So this is something that you have to try over and over again. How do I trick myself to think that this solve doesn't matter by thinking about something else, something positive, something unrelated to the consequences of the solve before I do the solve? So what I want you to do now is to pick any variable that you can randomize before your next practicing session. And as you are steadily building up your framework, you will feel more and more comfortable at comp, because any solve at comp will feel identical to any solve that you do elsewhere. I hope this video helps. So if you have any suggestions, you can let me know in the comment section. Bye.